guys. How many times y'all gonna catch me sleeping on the job here? Goodness. Well, anyway, welcome back to Cannonball Repair. Last time y'all saw me, we was putting this swivel seat in this Astro van. But today, Dan has brought me a diesel heater we're gonna put in this Astro van. Y'all stay tuned. Okay guys, the plan is, this is this bed here, and it's a slide out. We got it undone right now, but as you can see, it slides out. But what we're going to do is we plan on putting this heater under the bed here. And he's got a wooden floor in here, so we're going to cut out a hole big enough so that we don't have to worry about catching the wood on fire. I've seen a lot of videos, me and him have both watched, and people are cutting these things and making them way too tight. This little heater is going to run, all night if you're out here. And why not run it all night? Because you want to stay warm. And so let's keep the heat away from wooden stuff. Okay, we've got the bed taken out, and that gives us access to this area here. He's going to put a drawer on this side, and we're going to put the heater here. So it'll be sitting in there somewhat like this is what we're shooting for. Heat coming out here, your cold air coming in here. So what we've got to do is cut an opening through this wooden floor to run the exhaust, intake, and your fuel through the bottom of the van. So we're going to make this opening big enough to get any heat away from the wood, away from the carpet, and down to the metal of the chassis. So to do that, we'll be using some 1-inch tubing and a piece of plate steel to fab up a mount. That way, by the time we cut all this out, our spacing will still keep this heater level with our wooden floor here. One cut down, one to go. I've still got all 10 fingers. No worries, guys. All right, there's our plate done. We'll deburr that, and then start cutting our tubing. Okay guys, we got this plate cut out. This is the plate that they send with those heaters. And what we're doing now is, the way we got this size is under the van, we held this plate up. Where the ribs are, you'll see later that this is where it was going to be. You need 2 inches of clearance from around your exhaust holes. So what that leaves us, we got the 1 inch of tubing, and then we got 2 inches of clearance front and back, mounting the rails in there like so, because the floor has those ribs that run this direction. And then you'll have 1 inch, this tubing will be 1 inch on both sides here, and weld up. And that will be our base. Okay, so we got these 4 pieces cut here and here. These will be like the jack stand, if you will. That plate will go on top of it, and that will elevate the heater high enough so that that wooden floor will be flush with this. That way everything's kind of smooth, looks better, professionally done by Cannonball Repair here. So next, we'll just lay this out, we'll weld this in and get everything welded up, and then Dan can take this and lay it out where he needs to be, and go ahead and cut out the floor and drill the holes that we need to mount the heater. Well guys, we got that bracket welded up, and he went home and cut this floor out, and I don't know what he cut it with. It looks like he cut it with a chainsaw. So it's pretty burry, and I don't like getting cuts or tetanus off of this, so I'm deburring. Alright, what we're doing now is we're putting this 1 inch tubing frame that we welded up together, putting that in here. I'm using this to give me an air gap so it's not completely against all this pretty woodwork. This guy, he can do some amazing stuff with wood, but metal's not his cup of tea.
so I'm gonna clamp this down.
Hey now.
I'm gonna clamp this down. We got holes already drilled. Got the drill bit. We're just gonna use that to transfer the holes into the van. Okay, we got all these holes drilled into here. So we take that back out, and now we're going to use 100% waterproof silicone. It's made from metal tin roofing, and it's supposed to withstand temperatures of 400 degrees. So from bench testing with my heater, we never saw 400 degrees. It was somewhere around 200 on the exhaust side, 250. So this is going to be fine. All right, we're getting ready to put the goop down now, guys. So we didn't go with the biggest, didn't go with the smallest, but we're just gonna lay us a continuous bead around here and set this frame in. Oh. Alright, down here under Dan's van, we got the bolts dropped through, we got it all gooped in, and I got a ratchet on the bottom, and then I ain't got nobody else here to help me, so I'm just going to reach around and stretch as far as I can. Almost. Almost. I got the ratchet on the bottom. I got to get a wrench on top. There it is. We're just smearing the goop around, making sure we got it in all the nooks and crannies so it's sealed off. We don't want no poisonous gases coming in and killing. All right, after you get the furnace hooked up in there or laid in and bolted down, you're going to want to straighten out your exhaust pipe. And then in this case, we got a 4-foot piece of pipe here. That way we can run it all the way out the back of the van. And being we got that one for the exhaust, we'll use the exhaust that come with it as an intake. That way, this stuff is mean. Whenever it's bent, you'll think you're going to break it trying to straighten it out. But we're going to use this as an intake, that one as an exhaust, and they got burrs on the inside, so we're going to deburr them. That way they'll slide on and seal better. All right, guys, so we got the diesel heater installed in the van, but we was running out of time. We was running out of steam on getting this in, and it was taking so long. If you do this installation, there's people online on YouTube that says you can do it in 2 to 4 hours. They're not doing a good job. If you want a good job, go ahead and look at cutting a day out to do it. And you know, you can do it in a day. It's a weekend project. You easily do it in a weekend, and do it right, because the gas, the noxious fumes out of this thing will kill you. So we don't need that. But anyway, so what we done is we went ahead and finished putting it all together, and we're going to go back through and touch bases on everything now and get everything squared away so you know exactly what we done here.
So the first phase was?
The first thing is you need to figure out where you're going to lay it out. Where are you going to put the heater? Where are you going to put the fuel pump? Where are you going to run your wires? Where's the battery going to be? You need to get all that figured out where you're going to put it. And that was the biggest time consume, figuring out exactly where it's going to lay, the layout. All right, can you go this far? You got to go underneath and figure out where you're going to run the intake and the exhaust. And you're only allowed 270 degrees worth of bends in the exhaust. So you need a pretty straight shot in the intake. You need a pretty straight shot on everything.
Why can't you bend it more than 270 degrees?
Well, it would restrict and put too much restriction on your intake and exhaust, and then it starts to carbon up on the inside. So you want it to stay as free-flowing as possible. That way it'll run better and last longer.
So when you bolt it down, is it just drill some holes and bolt it through the floor?
Not quite. Some people have done that, but in this, we had a raised floor we had to deal with, a wooden floor. So we had to cut a hole in that, and we had to cut a hole in the bottom of the van, and then we built a riser plate to go in there to raise the heater up, and then went underneath and we sealed all the way around on all the surfaces. That way there's no way water, dust, or the exhaust from this heater can get back into the cabin here.
So the main thing is keeping all the exhaust on the outside.
Right. Exhaust on the outside, fresh air inside.
I've seen a lot of YouTube videos with the exhaust connected and part of that's on the inside. How can it leak?
It can leak. It can leak quite a bit, especially if you have a lot of restriction going through the exhaust pipe. Where this is there's a complete hole under the van, so everything's under the van now. And we've got it all sealed up on the underneath. There's no leaks in this one.
I guess there's several other phases. I guess you could, when you open that box of pieces and parts up, there's like 3 or 4 different phases of things you have to hook up. If we can talk about those and look at how you install them, that would probably be pretty helpful.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
What's the first thing that you have to do after you've mounted this thing down on your floor? Just putting the exhaust in as far as angles and restrictions and and bolting it up. Is it just put it in there and just you don't bend it more than 270 degrees? Is there a little more to it?
There's a little more to that. You want to keep it kind of straight and running downhill if you can. And luckily in this application we was able to do that without any problems. The exhaust comes out, we made a 90-degree bend and kind of angled it over, and then it sloped down. We made a bracket to mount it on the Reese hitch under the back, and got the muffler on there. And it is. We'll get to this in a bit, and I'll show y'all where we done that. But it looks good. It's running downhill. It shouldn't have no problem in holding moisture. And then we actually did. Dan purchased a longer exhaust pipe because they only give you 2 foot to begin with. So he bought a 4-foot section, and that was plenty enough to run it all the way out the back with the heater, the furnace mounted on. Didn't have to mount the furnace towards the back. It's all in the layout, guys. So we was able to mount the furnace a little further forward, which is nice to have it centralized in the van for better even heating. And then we mounted the intake. So we took the extra exhaust pipe, the 4-foot, and made our exhaust. We took the 2-foot to come with the furnace to make our intake. Now that was awesome. And we run that up under the heat shield, so it's protected from dirt, dust, water, whatever would fly up off the road, because it's actually in between the heat shield and the bottom of the van. So there's an air gap there, and it's tucked in nicely above that.
So you don't want water getting in that intake.
No, you don't want water. They don't run good underwater. And on these, you got an electric pulse pump, and they're metered, so they only allow a certain amount of fuel for each click, because they sit there and click. So you got to decide where you can put that. You got to put it close to your fuel supply, because these electric pumps push better than they pull. So I think SBAR says that it'll push to 20 feet. So if your fuel tank is at the other end of the van or camper or whatever, that's no problem, as long as you're within the 20 feet. So you need to figure out where your gas tank is going to be, and then mount your fuel pump, and then you can run your fuel line on into the heater.
We got the exhaust installed, and we decided where to mount the fuel pump, and I think you touched on everything with the fuel pump, on the angles.
Right. You want your fuel pump somewhere between 15 and 30 degrees, at an angle. You can mount them flat, but they work better if they're mounted at an angle. Air doesn't get trapped in them, and they'll stay full of fuel, and the fuel is what lubricates this pump. So you want to keep fuel in it if you can and get rid of the air.
Okay.
That way you don't have a premature wear out of your pump.
Yeah. And of course the fuel line that they gave us was that soft silicone fuel line, and you said that wasn't good, that SBAR said to use a certain size.
SBAR recommends a 1.5 millimeter. We got 2 millimeters, and it'll work just the same, but the rubber line absorbs the pulses from the fuel pump, so it won't deliver the fuel like it should. With that harder line, anybody that works on a diesel engine or say a diesel tractor, you got hard lines running from the injection pump into the injectors. They do that for a reason. So that's the same principle we're applying to this heater. It's all about fuel delivery. You want that pressure to maintain and get better atomization around the screen in it.
You've got another video on that fuel line, don't you?
I do. Go. I'll post that video and a link to that video, and y'all can go back and check that out.
That's critical.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you've got the fuel line hooked up.
Now you can use that soft green fuel line from the fuel tank to your fuel pump. That's no big deal. But after the fuel pump to the furnace, y'all want to use that 2mm fuel line.
Okay. That's good. So that hose that they gave us wasn't totally worthless.
No, we was able to use a little bit of it.
Yeah. You'll have to show how you hooked up that gas tank. That was really neat. But that'll be something for you to show in the video, I think, when we move around a little bit. That worked good. So after you've got the fuel hooked up and the exhaust hooked up, you got this big pile of wires.
Yeah. Yep. And then you had to do, that's another part of the layout. You'll have to decide where your lines are going, what to do with this, how far can you mount your battery away, and you need to mount these wires directly to a battery. Don't put them on a keyed switch. Don't put them on a toggle switch.
Fuse block.
It needs to be run to a fuse. Well, it's got a fuse in the system, but it needs to be run directly to a 12-volt source that is always on. Because if this heater, say you're going down the road and you're using the heater and you get where you're going, you just cut the key off and it's wired in with the key, it doesn't go through its cool down cycle. You done cooked all the electronics on the top of that thing, because it goes through a cool down cycle. That fan comes on and it blows air across the electronics until everything cools down. And so if you miss out on that cool down cycle, it will melt down the electronics on top of it.
Important.
Very important.
Yeah, write that down. Okay. And so it's pretty much a plug and play as far as the connections go to everything in here.
Yeah, everything's got its own connector. The furnace has a big connector. There ain't but one big connector in the harness. The fuel pump is a 2-wire connector, and your little LCD screen is a 3-wire connector.
You can't connect them wrong.
No, you can't connect it wrong. The only connection that could be made wrong is if you put the red wire to the negative side of the battery. That's the only wrong connection that can be made here.
So it sounds like the only thing hard to do is to figure out where to put all these pieces in your specific vehicle or van.
Yep.
You managed to put one of these in a little Ford Fiesta?
Yep.
So it can be put in a lot of different things.
Oh, yeah.
How about a garage?
Yep. We run it in the garage there for a while. Just, bench testing it. There's a video of us bench testing it as well. We just want to check output before we put it in the car. But, yep, you can as long as you got a 12-volt source and a fuel line, hook it up and run it.
Well, that's great. I think that'll help a lot, knowing how it done it. And you did a really good a good setup on this van. So maybe we can take time to take a look at it and see where you've run everything, and maybe that'll help some people.
Sure thing. The only problem is, guys, if you buy one of these heaters, this is January. It's 71 degrees out here today.
North Carolina.
In North Carolina. Welcome to North Carolina. All right, let's get under here and see what's going on. All right, guys. Here's the heater mounted in, rock solid. Here's that main harness that comes out of the heater. See how large that connector is? It only goes together one way. So that's where that goes. And you got three that split off. This smaller wire is a 2-strand wire that runs down to the fuel pump that is mounted below.
The 2-strand wire?
Yes, it's 2 strands, and they're both brown. And as you can see, we had to cut this one to get the wire through. You can drill a big hole and put the head of the plug through, but you can drill a small hole and just run your wires through, and they're both brown. And so, being it's like a solenoid, polarity doesn't matter. So you just hook them back together. That's what we done there.
And you hook them together on top inside the van as opposed to under the van.
Right. That way they're in here where it's dry. If you go through a car wash, they stay dry. If that was under the van, you stand a chance on getting moisture in there and causing corrosion. And corrosion means no connection, which means no fuel pump, no heat. Then we move on to a little bit the larger gauge wire. This is 2 strands that goes to your positive and negative of your battery.
Yeah.
And it has a fuse in the circuit for it. What's that? 15 amp fuse in circuit.
Okay. So if you don't have a fuse block, you need to use that fuse.
Right. If you don't have a fuse block, you need to use that and hook it to your battery. And then the last wire, the third wire that comes out, is a 3-wire bundle that has a triangle style plug on it. Only plugs in one direction. And the controller with this one ends up being the LCD screen. Now they got different controllers. There's a version newer than this, but right now this one seems to be most popular. And you can get some that's just an on-off and a dial. Those work just the same, but this one's nice. It's got error codes. There's videos on how to go through all this and program it and whatnot. But you got a time. It's 24 degrees Celsius. The heater's set at 19 degrees Celsius. We got 12.3 volts in the battery, and we don't have no error codes, so we're good to go.
Awesome. And this one came with the remote. I like the remote.
Yes, that remote is nice. It'll spoil you, I'll tell you that much now.
Awesome. Okay.
And as I was saying about the fuel system, here's the line. This is the fuel line that comes with the system. It's that soft, rubbery fuel line.
Silicone?
Yes, a silicone fuel line. And it's good for feeding to the fuel pump, but after the fuel pump, don't use it. And then here's your fuel filter. And you want the outside part of the filter to receive the fuel first. That way you can actually see if you have trash in there or not. So the fuel filter will work either direction, but it's best to have your fuel coming in on the clear side. That way you can see what it's doing.
Okay.
And then here is that pickup straw that they send with that kit. We was able to adapt it. I'll post that video on how we adapted that. And the reason we have this kind of length is you can remove the fuel tank. You can set it right here on the bumper, bring your nozzle in, and refill it right here. Okay guys, we're down here under the van now, and as you can see, I'm going to cover the exhaust here. We'll come out. Look at that. Got a little more than 90 degrees. Comes down, another bend here, mounted up, runs right out the back into the muffler. Now ain't that slick? And see, notice how everything is running downhill. There's nowhere for moisture to hold. If you was to try to keep it against the floor, come down, go around this frame and go back up, and no, don't do that. You would have moisture accumulate in the bottom, and that like a P-trap iron, and it would cause a lot of problems. And then here is the intake, and notice how it's running in behind this heat shield for the exhaust. It's stuck in there, in behind here, and it's protected by this frame rail here. That keeps, the wind that's coming under the van, it keeps it from force feeding and blowing into that, and it's just that way it can breathe in all the air that it wants, and it's not being force fed. That makes it more efficient, cuts back on it carboning up. And then here's our fuel line running in. You can see that that's that 2mm plastic line. And then we got that rubber grommet here where it goes through the frame rail. That way it's not plastic on metal. If that moves any, it just moves right there against that metal. And then try to keep no real sharp bends in the fuel line. That way you got good delivery. Our fuel pump mounted at an angle. And you can see here, we tried to keep our wires just as short underneath. There's a grommet here as well, and then we went ahead and sealed it too. We didn't have a grommet that fit them wires just perfect, but we filled it in with that silicone, and it ain't going to leak or have any moisture or anything come in there. But that's the 2 wires and the plug that goes to your fuel. We put dielectric grease on this connector too. It is a waterproof connector, but a lot of people say that they tend to leak, have moisture get in there, so we put some dielectric grease to keep the water out. And then here's our feed line coming in. We got it mounted up secure, and then got a grommet on it as well. Anytime you got rubber passing against metal, try to use a grommet. That's all we can say. And another tidbit about this muffler here, guys. Just like on the Festiva, whenever we mounted that one, this one's got that little weep hole here. So if moisture gets inside the muffler, it's got to have somewhere to come out of. So mount it up and down. Alright guys, that's going to conclude this video on the van with the installation of this heater. We're going to send it back home to Dan. He's got some more work to do. He's got some more carpentry skills to show us here. As y'all can see, he's quite well in what he does. He just can't cut sheet metal. He's got a chainsaw or something he does that with. But anyway, hopefully whenever he gets this done, we can have him back on the channel, and maybe he can give us a tour of home away from home. So y'all stay tuned for that. Thank you now.